Good evening. I'm Neil Gordon, CEO of the Discovery Museum in Acton, Massachusetts, and I'd like to welcome you to the fifth and final event in the 2023 Discovery Museum Speaker Series. Tonight, we're presenting it in partnership with our friends at the Chicago Children's Museum. Tonight's topic is Incarceration and Families. What is the toll on children? With Dr. Nneka Jones Tapia. I want to thank you all for joining us for what's going to be an important and interesting conversation with Nneka. A quick bit of housekeeping before we get started. So the Q&A will be at the end. And in order to submit your questions, if you could use the Q&A button, and we'll address as many of those questions as possible at the end. You can use the chat button for any technical questions you have for the webinar host. Closed captioning can be turned on and off using the button at the bottom of the screen. And finally, just to let you know, we are recording tonight's presentation, and a link of the presentation will be sent to all the registrants once available. We'll also send you a list of any resources that are referenced during the webinar tonight. I'm really pleased to extend a special thank you to our speaker series sponsors. Tonight's event is free to all with the support of the Cummings Foundation, who generously is also supporting our prison partnership program. As well, we thank our sponsors of Enterprise Bank, Sutherland Realty Group, and NetScout, along with all the other sponsors that are shown here. I want to thank all of you as well who have made a donation in support of the series, along with your reservation for tonight. So tonight's event is a little bit different for us in that we're presenting it in partnership with our friends at the Chicago Children's Museum. Now, while we're far apart geographically, our two museums share a philosophy on the importance of supporting all parents to be great parents, and in so doing, support their kids. Both museums are working locally to support incarcerated parents and their families. Chicago began this work before we did, so we've looked to them for advice to guide our efforts and how best to support our program for great outcomes. We have a great deal of respect for our friends in Chicago in this area, as we do in many other areas. Tonight's partnership came about because both museums had an interest in bringing this topic to a broader audience, probably one that neither of us could reach alone. And we're thrilled to be sharing an audience with each other and across the country tonight. So to introduce our speaker, I'd like to turn and introduce Jennifer Farrington, who is the president of Chicago Children's Museum and a long-time colleague and friend. So Jennifer, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Neil. Chicago Children's Museum is absolutely thrilled to be co-presenting tonight's program with you and with the Discovery Museum. In doing so, we see this as an opportunity to really amplify the important work that children's museums do to positively impact children and families through innovative partnerships and parent support programs.
Thanks, Jennifer.
We are honored to host tonight's guest, Dr. Nneka Jones Tapia. Dr. Tapia is the Managing Director of Justice Initiatives at Chicago Beyond, a philanthropic organization that works to ensure that all young people and community members are free to live full lives. Because there is no single barrier to equity, Chicago Beyond engages in opportunities across philanthropy, justice, education, and beyond. And since its inception in 2016, Chicago Beyond has invested more than $49 million in almost 200 individuals and community organizations. Incredible. But back to Dr. Tapia. As a clinical psychologist, she received her doctorate of psychology from the Virginia Consortium Program in clinical psychology, and as the former warden of the Cook County Department of Corrections, transformed that system's treatment of mental health. Today, Dr. Tapia is a fierce advocate for all of our children and an important partner and connector to people and organizations dedicated to improving outcomes for all of Chicago's youth. In short, Dr. Tapia is fighting to build emotional wellness for our youth. I am really thrilled to now turn it over to my friend, Dr. Nneka Jones Tapia, to present Incarceration in Families: What is the Toll on Children?
Thank you for that gracious welcome, Jennifer, and to Neil. And thank you to your entire teams at the Chicago Children's Museum, as well as the Discovery Museum, for allowing me to facilitate today's conversation on the impact of incarceration to children and families. I am Dr. Nneka Jones Tapia, as Jennifer shared. I am a clinical psychologist and the managing director of justice initiatives at Chicago Beyond. As Jennifer shared, we are a philanthropic organization, and we are focused on building equitable opportunities for our young people and our community members. And we do that by investing in individuals and organizations, also as Jennifer shared. But we also lead national systems change work. And we do that by designing and supporting and building out community-driven solutions, much of which I will talk about this evening. Now, before joining Chicago Beyond, you see me in this picture here, I was a warden of Cook County Jail in Chicago. And I worked there for just about 11 years, and I was the warden for about 3 of those years. And at the time, Cook County Jail was the largest single-site jail in the country. Now, just to give a little more context, when I started at the jail, there were about, or I would say more than 10,000 people housed in that facility. You heard me correctly, 10,000 people. It was like a little city. When I retired from corrections in 2018, there were just about 6,000 people housed there. And today, there are just under 4,800 people housed there. Smart decreases in the number of people incarcerated in jails and prisons is imperative to public safety, because we understand that in order to ensure the safety of everyone, we have to reduce the negative impact that these institutions have. Now, when I'm talking about negative impact, I'm speaking specifically about trauma, exposure to persistent and severe trauma within and because of these institutions. Now, usually when we talk about trauma, we are defining it as an event or a circumstance that has been experienced or witnessed by a person as harmful or life-threatening. And it has the lasting consequences on a person's emotional, physical, spiritual, social well-being. But this view of trauma is just way too narrow, especially when we think about applying it to systems, particularly the carceral system, jails and prisons. Why? Because it fails to account for the depth and the range of the impact of trauma that these systems have. It also fails to acknowledge the role that the system itself has on the people within it. Now, as a former correctional administrator, I will tell you, I will admit that I created and signed off on policies and procedures that unintentionally caused harm to a lot of people. Now, when we fail to recognize the impact of trauma to the entire ecosystem of people who are touched by the carceral system, we miss opportunities to fully support all of the people who are harmed by it. Studies show that 98% of men and 99% of women who are incarcerated have experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. One large state correctional system found that 73% of their staff had seen someone hurt or killed on the job. Working in corrections is not a normal professional experience. Every incarcerated person I have encountered and every staff person working in a correctional system I have encountered has been overexposed to trauma. They have either directly or indirectly witnessed, experienced, or heard about the violence that occurs in these institutions, and they fear what will happen to them. Now, this is about more than numbers, though. It's really about lives. For every 1 year a person is incarcerated, they lose an average of 2 years off of their lifespan. Adding a little more context there are people who are sitting in the Cook County Jail in Chicago right now for more than 10 years, waiting to find out if they are guilty of a crime or if they'll be found guilty of a crime. 10 years. The average life expectancy of people in the United States is 79 years. Did you know that the average life expectancy of a correctional staff person is 59 years? 20 years less than people living in the general public. So when we talk about the impact of incarceration on children and families are losing their loved ones because of their proximity to America's jails and prisons. The situation is just that dire. Now, I don't have many photos of my early years with my dad. We visited him in prison every weekend for about 3 years. And I only have really a handful of memories. His arrest is probably the clearest of those memories. Now, in minimum security prisons in North Carolina in the 1980s, I know I'm dating myself, families could bring food into the facilities. And so every Saturday, my mom spent hours in the kitchen cooking Sunday dinner. And we would pack it up in picnic baskets to have Sunday dinner with my dad. Having the ability to share a meal with my dad really helped me to better process the loss of not having him in the home with me daily. Like those meals were our time to bond, and they were really our time to heal. Well, one day, an officer decided for whatever reason that he was going to cut into a cake my mom made with what I'm assuming is a dirty object, because I remember him pulling it from his pocket. Now, of all of the Sunday dinners, that one stuck with me. Needless to say, we did not have dessert that day. Another memory is from a summer day when we were visiting. And I remember wearing a dress much like the one I'm wearing in this photo. In case you didn't know, I'm the cute little girl in the blue dress. No humility there. And I remember my legs being cold from sitting on these like large metal benches that were cemented to a concrete floor in a large air-conditioned room. My dad was eating popcorn at the time, and he started to cough almost uncontrollably. And my mom gave me and my sister some money to get a soda from the canteen so he could clear his throat. And even though that moment was urgent, I couldn't bring myself to move too quickly because my eyes were glued to the officer who was standing in the tower with what at least I remember to be a rifle in his hand. And again, I'm 8 years old. So he also had this very scary look on his face. Now, in reality, I honestly don't know if the officer really had a gun, but it was his presence that made me remember it that way. It was his presence that elicited fear. And I remember thinking in that moment, I don't want to run because I don't want him to shoot me. I was 8 years old. That was my weekend experience for several years. And like all of the other kids in my neighborhood, I showed up at school on Monday morning, ready to learn. Now, what was different was that I carried a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, and a lot of sadness in that room with me that no one spoke about. Growing up, I never talked about my dad's incarceration. And it was about 30 years later when I was appointed the warden of Cook County that a journalist with the New York Times, the journalist of this article that's titled here, asked me about my experiences, and I shared them for the first time publicly. And even as an accomplished adult, I remember feeling this overwhelming sense of fear of what people were going to think about when they read that article. And I sat on the floor of my bathroom the day that this article was published, and I cried. And I called my family and apologized. I called the sheriff and apologized. 30 years later, I was dealing with my own shame still. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that moment that this article was published, it was really a moment of freedom for me and a lot of other people who had dealt with similar circumstances. A lot of adult children of parents who were incarcerated came to me and said, wow, like I had this experience too, and I don't talk about it either. Now, from the memories I shared, I really hope that you understand these three things. First and foremost, our children are resilient, particularly when they have access to the resources that they need to help them deal with the realities of just life, not just parental incarceration, but life. Because of the number of youth who are impacted by parental incarceration and a host of other like potentially traumatizing experiences, child-focused agencies and systems like daycares, schools, and libraries, and museums, and others must offer universal healing supports. Research estimates that there are about 2.7 million children in this country who are experiencing parental incarceration on any given day. But we know that number is really a gross underestimate because it primarily accounts for children whose parents are incarcerated in prisons and not jails. But can I tell you that millions more people enter jails in this country every year than the people who enter prison? Millions. So it's safe to assume that millions more children are impacted. And lastly, I want you to walk away knowing that correctional institutions must shift the way that they operate to reduce the traumatic impact of their operations on children and families who are wanting to remain connected to their incarcerated loved ones. With the presence of a positive social support system, resources for healing, and an ability to maintain a positive relationship with the incarcerated parent, the millions of children impacted by parental incarceration do and can thrive. It's important to note, though, that without these supports, children dealing with parental incarceration are at increased risk of negative experiences like psychological distress, problems associated with family financial distress, problems in school. And those experiences can then lead to the child having negative outcomes like lower socioeconomic status later in life and lower educational attainment, and even a higher risk of involvement with the criminal legal system. But it really doesn't have to be that way, because children are resilient. Now, research shows that contact visits held in safe, non-institutional, child and family-friendly environments help to mitigate the negative effects that I just talked about of parental incarceration. But one problem is that most correctional spaces are not typically designed to accommodate contact visits that are developmentally appropriate for children. And in fact, most jails in this country do not even allow for contact visitation at all. Many of them have visitations that look like the image that you have here on your screen. And prison spaces are typically emotionally cold and staffed with people who have not been trained in trauma-informed practices. But there's a sunlight coming. In 2019, Chicago Beyond set out to really disrupt this type of status quo by forming this multi-partner coalition with our friends at the Chicago Children's Museum, the Center for Childhood Resilience at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, and most important, the Cook County Sheriff's Office, to really expand the possibilities of what family visitation in correctional institutions could be. Using Chicago Beyond's framework for holistic safety, we identified 4 key components that were meant to shift visitation visitation practices and experiences at the Cook County Jail. And you can learn more about our framework for holistic safety in our publication, Do I Have the Right to Feel Safe, at chicagobeyond.org. The 4 components that we use to design a trauma-informed correctional visitation experience included stakeholder engagement, policy and procedural reforms, staff training, and environmental changes. I'm doing a lot of admissions here in this webinar. So one other admission I will share is that as a correctional administrator, one thing I did not fully appreciate was the power of engaging correctional staff and the people who were incarcerated in the system in the policy and the procedural decisions I was making. Now, what I later realized was that the programs and the operational decisions that I made with these 2 stakeholder groups were the ones that lasted long after my tenure. So going into this, we knew the importance of talking with families with incarcerated loved ones, talking with correctional staff, talking with people who were incarcerated in the system about their hopes, their fears, and the challenges that they faced. And we developed several mechanisms, in fact, to engage these key stakeholders before, during, and after the visits. And I want to be very clear here. Not only did we listen to these key stakeholders, but we also worked to incorporate their hopes and identified strategies to mitigate their fears and challenges. As an example, some of the people who were incarcerated who participated in the pilot visitations we did, that I'll tell you more about in just a moment, but some of the incarcerated parents had not told their children they were incarcerated, and they feared how their children would respond when they knew. So we employed the assistance of a clinician to work with the parents on relaying difficult information. As another example, some of the staff expressed concerns about the possibility of a negative event occurring if the parents were not handcuffed while they were with their families. So we talked about ways to strengthen covert security procedures to minimize the chances of a multitude of security risks. And none of those security procedures were visible to the children and parents and families. Now, correctional policies and procedures are typically written with an eye only towards physical safety and the physical safety of one or two groups. And rarely do they consider the importance of psychological safety. Like, do people really feel safe? Because the goal of this new visitation experience was to increase positive family engagement in a way that allowed all of the key stakeholders to feel safe, we revised the policies in a way that increased the psychological safety of the staff, the people incarcerated, children, and families. We employed the unique blend of our knowledge of safety. Remember, we're a multi-system coalition of people coming together with safety expertise, mental health expertise, expertise in developmentally appropriate play spaces for children. We all put our knowledge together to propose trauma-informed policy and practice shifts. As I share some of those shifts, please listen for some of the tenets of holistic safety. So, for example, staff and people incarcerated were dressed in casual clothing instead of the typical fear-provoking uniforms that you see people in. This change really allowed everyone to be viewed as humans and not as people who were incarcerated or correctional staff. All of the sheriff office's policies changed the language from words like inmate and detainee to now say an individual in custody. The sheriff's office also employed therapeutic dogs, and they were made available to the children and families. The sheriff's office also relied on its trust in technology to allow families to walk through metal detectors that had the sound silenced instead of enduring invasive pat-down searches. Searches of the incarcerated parents took place outside of the line of sight of children and families, and handcuffs were not present in the visitation space. All evidence of the trust that the sheriff's office had in the environment. We also had several activities for families to freely participate in, increasing their personal agency to select what worked best for them in the moment. And all of the families were allowed to have physical contact with each other, some of them for the first time in more than a year. Now, it wasn't enough for us to understand the impact of trauma on people incarcerated and the staff and children and families. We really needed to ensure that the staff and the people incarcerated understood the impact as well. So correctional staff, museum staff, and mental health staff all participated in joint training on the impact of trauma, and were taught like tools to mitigate that impact. We wanted people to walk away with resources in hand. Mental health staff also met with people who were incarcerated regularly to address the same. So not only did the training center health, but it also really minimized this typical us versus them culture that exists in corrections between staff and people incarcerated by really like bridging the commonalities that they shared. Human behavior is guided by the person and their environment, right? Nature and nurture. With this in mind, we sought to really broaden the perspectives of all of the key stakeholders who were participating in this by holding our planning meetings at the Chicago Children's Museum. Can I tell you, it was a different feeling walking through the Chicago Children's Museum, a space filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing, and bright, cheerful colors, and the smell of popcorn. All of those things created a different foundation for the engagement that we committed to this work. And that experience would have been completely different if we would have held those planning meetings in a correctional facility and all we saw was barbed wire and concrete walls. For the actual visitation space, we ensured the spaces were available to decompress, as well as ensuring spaces were available for family play and conversation and connections within and between families. We used these key components to pilot 2 visitation experiences with the Cook County Sheriff's Office. One was at the Chicago Children's Museum in downtown Chicago at Navy Pier, and the other was in an area of the jail that housed the Sheriff's Office Mental Health Transition Center. And the impact of those experiences served as motivators for the participating parents, as well as stress relief for the children. And I'll just describe for you this moment that is just like forever embedded in my mind and in my heart. And it is the moment of the visitation experience at the Chicago Children's Museum, when all of the incarcerated parents were in the museum and the doors of the museum opened and their children and their loved ones came running in to embrace them. Again, for some of them, it was the first embrace they had in more than a year. And when that moment came and dads picked their babies up, whether they were 2, 4, or 16, there was not a dry eye in the room. Like, we all felt that emotional freedom of that moment. And it was just beautiful. Again, forever embedded as one of my now positive memories of family visitation in a correctional facility. Correctional staff also felt it. Like, they were welling up with tears, and they felt that the visits helped them to better relate to the community and gave the community a different perspective of them, because finally dads and families were seeing law enforcement engaging with children and playing with children, much different than the images of law enforcement that they saw on the news. Community mental health staff also noticed that bonds were built between families. And so now, today, every person who is incarcerated at the Cook County Jail now has access to contact visitation because of the vision of Sheriff Tom Dart, and because of this multi-stakeholder coalition that came together, that included Chicago Beyond, the Chicago Children's Museum, the Center for Childhood Resilience at Lurie Children's Hospital, and others. A priority of every correctional administrator in this country must be to address the trauma that exists within and because of their systems. And one way to do this for children and families who are impacted by incarceration is to really shift the facility's visitation practices, making them more trauma-informed and child and family friendly. And that starts with partnership with the people incarcerated in the facility, partnership with the staff, partnership with community members and organizations who are committed to making holistic safety a reality in every community. Now, it is not easy by any stretch of the imagination to do this work, but I hope you know now that it is possible. The key is to just start. Correctional administrators, prioritize changes in your system's visitation, like engaging with these key stakeholders, community organizations, engage with your local correctional institution to raise awareness and offer partnership to shift these practices. Engage with families impacted by incarceration because their voice is most critical to this work. Policymakers, elevate the issue of trauma associated with incarceration and take action to shift policies and practices. And funders, provide money, provide financial support to community organizations committed to engaging in this work. All of our families and all of our children deserve something more than what we are currently giving them in this system. And with that, I thank you, and I'm opening it up for questions and engagement.
Thank you so much, Nneka. We are so grateful for your expertise and that you are out there doing this work and fighting for all of our children. And I also want to thank you for sharing your personal story as well. This is serious work. This is urgent work. And this information that you have shared is really incredibly helpful as we all challenge ourselves to think about how we can how we can reduce the impact of this trauma on these children. There are some great questions, and we want to get to them. Can you talk a little bit about the similarities or differences between having a parent incarcerated or having a sibling incarcerated? This is a question that was asked.
Yeah, everyone's experience is different. Having a family member incarcerated, period, can be traumatic, especially an immediate family member. When you have a sibling, there are sibling bonds that are very important, much like parental and child bonds. And so I would liken them as much the same. It's a loss. It's a loss, and it's a loss associated with a great deal of shame.
Thank you. We've got another question about your mention about the impact of the carceral system, working within the carceral system, the impact on the prison staff. How do you design programs that prioritize the mental health of the staff as well as of the incarcerated people?
Well, first, we start by talking with them. We design with and not for. And by engaging them, much like we did the staff when we were designing this together, right, Jennifer? Like, we engaged them on what it is they need, what it is they want to see. And that is unique and special. Because again, admissions here, when I was an administrator, here, I'm a psychologist, right? I thought I knew. Any correctional administrator watching this They sit at their desk and they, with this swift mark of a pen, will create a policy or a practice without asking people. And I realize now the value of just simply engaging people in the process and taking them along the journey. You know, we're working with different correctional institutions now, and many of the staff are hurting. And it's not that they don't want programs for people who are incarcerated, but they're saying, what about me? And so we've been listening to them and taking their tips on what they want to have happen. And much of it is very similar to what people incarcerated want. Like there's this us versus them dynamic, but when it gets down to the brass tacks, like we're all humans and we value connection. We want to be made a part of something. We don't want to be told or have something stuffed down our throats. And we want to know that we matter. And in order for us to know that we matter, we have to have a seat at the table. And so that's what we do. We design these programs with the people and understanding that changes occur along the way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I echo your urging us to listen, to sit down and talk. That was certainly something that was incredibly impactful when we did our program together, was seeing the impact of the entire experience on the corrections officers, reflecting on their relationship with their own children, reflecting on the similarities that they had with the men that they worked alongside, but in very different power roles. It was really amazing.
Jennifer, like how many of the staff were there when that visit took place? How many of them were like, man, I want to go home and hug my children? Like how many of them were like, I want to bring my child to the museum? You know, it was just it was more than a moment. It was really a shift in how people viewed each other.
For sure. And got down to that commonality that we all want the best for our children, no matter our individual circumstances. That is number one for parents. All right, we have lots of questions. We're going to keep moving. This person says, thank you so much for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the role that restorative justice programs can play, both as an alternative to incarceration and as a community of support for children impacted by family incarceration.
You know, I think most importantly, restorative justice is beneficial for helping to keep people out of the system. Like the system that we have right now, truthfully speaking, is not a system that quote unquote corrects behavior. It's a system that punishes behavior. And what restorative justice does is say, like, we don't need to punish. What we need is accountability. Take accountability for your actions and let's start the healing process on every end. And that's really what a correctional system should be. And so I value the practices of restorative justice to helping people to be made whole, people on every angle of this criminal justice experience.
This is another one. With all of the deeply embedded social messages about why people enter the prison system, how can we help children to make sense of their parents' incarceration? Oh, that is a big one.
It is. So I have a 4-year-old son, and I'm going to take something that he has taught me and bring it into this. You know, children are very wise and they know what's going on. They are little adults. And I have learned to have conversations with him, real conversations with him. And yes, I try to make them developmentally appropriate, but I honestly don't know what is. And so as a parent, I ask him, does that make sense to you? Really tell me if it doesn't. And we have those conversations. You know, there are all kinds of messages our children will receive throughout life. but having a home base for them to ask those tough questions, those difficult questions, makes all the difference in the world. You know, the research that I shared in the PowerPoint, it's like children who are experiencing parental incarceration can have all kinds of negative outcomes, but two things help them to thrive. And that's one, what we did, helping them to have a positive relationship with their incarcerated parent. And the second is their ability to have a positive adult in their life. And for many of our young people, that positive adult is another parent, it's a grandparent, it's an older sibling. You know, like we can be that positive adult in people's lives. That's where I really emphasize child-focused systems and agencies really approaching our children in that way. Like so many kids are dealing with so many different things, parental incarceration, COVID, you know, you name it, violence. And what they need is just a safe space to talk.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you there. And I think I would add that it's a combination of both helping them make sense of it and make sure they have those resources, making sure we're asking those follow-up questions. We're also looking at all the ways they're telling us, not just verbally. How are they telling us with their behavior? How are they telling us with their sleep patterns and their eating patterns? How are they telling us through their artwork? You know, there's so much. And then our colleague, our Children's Museum colleague in Kansas, who has a really extraordinary program with women who are incarcerated in her community and their children, she talks so wonderfully about the importance of when we can improve the quality of the parent-child visits, we give the child the language around normalizing experiences. And so when they have the chance to make a snack together with their parent, then they say to their friends, oh yeah, my dad and I were having a snack this weekend. Or, oh, I did that art project with my mom. My mom reads me that book. Things that we don't think about, we take from them when we keep parents from their children. We rob children of those normalizing experiences that put them on a level playing field and help them make sense of their whole world. Their whole world is about what book they read and what they play and what snack they had and what they did with their mom or dad. So I thought that was really powerful.
So true.
There's so many questions. This one says, working in corrections for close to 30 years has been such an eye-opening experience. This is so important. I'm so glad the topics are being addressed. Do you have any statistics on how this has helped recidivism?
Unfortunately, I don't. I think it's too early for us to look at statistics on recidivism. But here is one thing that I will say to that is when we talk about correctional systems, we often use as an indicator of whether something was successful or not, we look at recidivism. And for me, it's about more than did a person return to the correctional facility. It's about, does this person like feel good about themselves? We saw that. We saw the lights come on in people's eyes. It's about, you know, do people see that they matter? Again, like, do they show up in a way that exemplifies a parent who feels that they matter? Dads were saying, like, this is inspiring me to be a better dad. It's, do children feel like they can sleep at night because they don't fear what's going to happen with their incarcerated parent? There were children who were there who were bright and talking about, oh, my daddy has friends, you know? And so for me, the indicators of success is just more related to the quality of life that a person has and the quality of social and familial engagement that they have with each other. Yeah, of course, so many of us are going to look for recidivism numbers, but that really cannot and should not be our indicator of success. It's about the people.
Thank you. There is a question that's quite practical, but I think important. This person is wondering if the pilot program was only with incarcerated men, or have programs like this been tested or done with females, moms?
Yes, so our program was with incarcerated dads, I think for a multitude of reasons. When I worked at Cook County Jail, some of the moms had access to contact visitation in this family-friendly space. None of the dads did. And I think it sends a message. You talk about messages in the world, like there's a message there about dads, that they're less important, not important, and particularly Black dads, that they're not there, can't be there. And we wanted to really turn that on its head. And so that's why we focused this visitation experience on dads. But once we completed those pilot visitation experiences, we continued to work with the sheriff's office and to now have this contact visitation experience open to everyone, moms, dads, everyone. They don't have to be parents. Everyone housed at the jail has access to this. And so I think that there was a lot of learning, and there was also a lot of message shifting when we engaged with the dads.
This next one says, we live in a society that seems to have very little compassion for those who are incarcerated. Are there key ways to get others to understand the urgency and to make a commitment to help children and families that are impacted by incarceration? And in what ways can interested community members help make a difference?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it starts with helping everyone to see that what happens behind the walls of a correctional institution doesn't just stay there. Like, if nothing else, COVID taught us that what happens behind those walls permeates those walls and comes out into communities. You know, there are a lot of people who leave and go back to those institutions, whether it's a staff member or a person who's incarcerated. And so understanding how many people are, let me go back and share a statistic. About half of US adults in this country have had an immediate family member incarcerated. Half of us have had an immediate family member who has been incarcerated. And when you think about the impacts of trauma that I mentioned, you know, that's permeating every community. People who are dealing with the trauma of having a loved one incarcerated are in our grocery stores, in our parks, in our churches. They're coaching our kids' football and basketball teams, and like we're engaging with them. And so I think the more that people understand this is not a them problem over there, this is an us problem. And then working collectively, like it only takes the desire, the will. And I think what we have done here is hopefully show people that with that desire and will, the possibilities are endless. And so my advice to people who want to get involved in this work is reach out to us. We're happy to talk through different opportunities that you may have. Engage with your local correctional institution. Believe me, they're hurting for support and help, and just freedom of thinking about ways that they can do things differently. Now, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, because to be frank, some correctional institutions won't be open to this. Others will. Keep trying.
Thank you. I want to reinforce something you said earlier in your presentation too, which is about the objectives of system change. And I think that was something that with our partnership, which, you know, it was a lot of effort to serve at first a very small number of parents and children. But what resulted was the impact of those in power seeing that this could be possible and there could be a different way. So the result was really these contact visits. That was really the objective. Those kids all had an awesome day, and those dads and all the folks who were working had a great day, but it really was about making that change. And I think that's something that I needed to learn through the process of working with you too, is that we have to keep our eyes on the big goal together and create the right program for the right time. That does lead to another question, which is somebody is saying, I'm impressed with the collaboration that went into this program design and implementation. What was the key to building that trusting process? And then a follow-up from a different person asks if this has gone beyond the pilot phase. And I'd say you and I probably have two very different maybe two different answers, but both good ones.
So what went into this coalition? Like, it just like, once we spoke it just came to be. There was the initial connection with our two institutions. And then we said, well, let's expand this. And we brought in the community mental health provider at the Center for Childhood Resilience. Most important, it was Sheriff Dart's willingness to engage with us in this work. Like, we had the idea and we had the wisdom and the expertise, but him opening his doors and saying, like, we're going to make this happen. I've long wanted to do this, and this is an opportunity, that solidified it. And for the second part of the question, like, has this gone past the pilot phase? Yes. So I recently had the pleasure of visiting Cook County Jail, and to see the staff light up when a dad was playing with this large game of Connect Four with his child was beautiful. I would say that they are not where they want to be, but they're striving towards it. It's really a journey. And just to know that children and families have more positive memories, it makes a big difference. Yeah. Now, what would you say to the has this gone past the pilot phase?
I would say there was an unexpected outcome of really being able to build a community of partners who could focus on this, and everybody asking what they could do. So, I would say it went from, 3 or 4 organizations coming together to getting some of our friends at Illinois Action for Children involved, to facilitating some special programming, connecting with some folks who had been children's librarians and looking at how they could do book drives to make sure that there were really great children's literature, great books available for those visit times. So to me, that's the greatest accomplishment. And I hope that we can become a broader network in Chicago of a whole bunch of organizations who are really fighting for children's experiences wherever they live and learn and spend time with their important adults. And then it jogged people's brains to think differently. I think those have been the outcomes. And I think it will evolve. We're not done yet.
Yes, that is very true. Like, you just jogged my memory, Jennifer, like going into the jail last week and seeing some of these child-friendly play spaces. They were child-friendly furniture and games that were donated by Laundry Cares, who you introduced us to. It was Illinois Action for Children supports different family events with the jail for holidays and special months. And so it really takes a community of people to make this happen.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great note for us to wrap up. There are lots more questions coming through, but our time is waning. And it's really a tribute to your inspiring presentation, that this could be a rich conversation that could go on for hours. And I hope it does. I hope it goes on in people's homes and people's workplaces, and people are inspired to think about how they can become a part of this movement as well. Thank you,
Jennifer. Thank you.
Nneka and Jennifer, I want to thank you for an incredibly fascinating dialogue. I feel like I learned a lot about this topic tonight, and the reaction from our audience out there has been incredibly positive. This power that you've described in designing a process in this collaborative way of involving people is pretty inspirational for all of us to think about just the techniques you've used to be successful. And Nneka, your trust in kids and your discussion about sort of the resilience of children is something that we've got to keep reminding ourselves of constantly. But again, we're really proud to be part of a group of museums working on this type of work around the country and taking our cues from the experiences that you both have had. And Nneka, thank you for sharing all of your experiences and inspiring others in this work. With that, I will say to all of our audience, thank you for joining us tonight. A number of folks have asked, and there will be a recording of this that will be emailed to everybody very soon. Everybody who's participated tonight will get a follow-up survey, and I hope you'll take the time to give us the feedback about what you saw tonight and how inspiring this talk was. So with that, I will say goodnight and thank you to everybody for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.